The rain tapped against the window in a Morse code that I alone could decipher. It was saying, "You are alone." Michael had left on another business trip that morning, his suitcase rolling over the threshold with the same indifference as the last 2 decades. The house sighed around me, its emptiness echoing in the creak of floorboards and the hum of the refrigerator. I followed the edge of my by-now-cold teacup, the steam having disappeared long before. I hadn't planned to venture out, but the rain persisted in its murmuring, and the stillness grew teeth. I put on my blue trench coat, the one Michael had given me on our 30th anniversary, which still smelled faintly of his aftershave, and walked to the hollowed cork, that dim downtown Asheville tavern where I'd been imbibing loneliness for decades. The bar was half empty, the air heavy with the smell of bourbon and wet wool. I slid into my corner booth, the leather tacky beneath me. That's when I noticed him. Louis, mid-30s perhaps. Unkempt chestnut hair, sweater sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and eyes the gray of storm clouds. He was at the bar drawing, in a notebook, a half-drunk whiskey at his elbow. When I met his gaze, he smiled, a smile that wrinkled the corners of his eyes, not the courteous smile of strangers. I looked away, feeling the heat rise to my face. Absurd. A woman of my years, blushing at a boy young enough to be her son. But then he stood up from his stool and walked over, notebook in hand. "Mind if I sit with you?" he said, his voice going through me like electricity. "You look like you could use a good tale." I hesitated. Michael's voice skipped through my mind. "Don't talk to strangers, Peg. Not safe." But the rain outside pounded harder, and Louis's smile did not look like danger. "We spoke of art," he illustrated, "and of the pain of empty nests. His mom had just entered hospice." His words were a balm, sewing up pieces of me I'd not known were. Torn, a flashback hit me, abrupt, intense. Michael, at 40, kissed me in the rain after a quarrel, his hands shaking. "I'll do better," he'd vowed. But the image vanished when Louis bent forward, his thumb following a bead of whiskey on the table. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect?" "Maybe someone smaller. Less alive, you know?" The bar's bulbs flickered. Outside, thunder growled. Louis paid for my drink. "Walk with me," he said, and I did. The rain had softened to a mist, the streets glistening like oil paintings. Asheville slept around us, its coffee shops shuttered, the mountains swallowed by the fog. He told me about his divorce. "She said I loved my sketchbook more than her," he laughed, but it was brittle. I confessed things I'd never told Michael, how I'd once wanted to be a poet, how I'd buried that dream under casseroles and PTA meetings. "Do you still write?" Louis asked. "No. It's silly. At my age." He stopped. "Silly? You're the most real person I've met in years." His hand lingered on my arm. The world tilted. My heels slip on wet pavement, and Louis steadies me, his hand lingering at my elbow. We pass the boarded-up jazz club where Michael and I danced once, lifetimes ago. The marquee is cracked now and letters missing. "Live mu ignitely." "Ever feel like life's a song you forgot the words to?" Louis asks, stopping beneath a flickering street lamp. I don't answer, but when he smiles, I feel the ghost of my younger self stir. The woman who wore red lipstick and danced until dawn. The woman Michael hasn't seen in years. We passed a closed bookstore, its window displaying "The Poetry of Forgotten Women." Louis pressed his palm to the glass. "See? The universe agrees with me." A parallel memory surfaced. Michael, at our kitchen table, scrolling, through emails as I recited a poem I'd written. "Sounds nice, Peg," he'd said, not looking up. Louis's fingers brushed mine. "What's something you've always wanted to do?" "Dance," I said without thinking. "Really dance. Not the stiff waltzes Michael and I did at weddings." Louis grinned. then dance. Right there, on the empty sidewalk, he hummed a bluesy tune and spun me. My laughter startled me, bright, unfamiliar. My hips swayed, my arms loosened, and for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like a ghost. We ended up at my house. The porch light flickered, a bulb Michael had meant to fix. Inside, Louis trailed his fingers over the family photos lining the hallway. "You've got a whole life here," he murmured. "Had," I corrected. He turned, his gaze heavy. "You still do." In the living room, he sketched me. "Stay just like that," he said, as I perched on the arm of the sofa. The scratch of his pencil mingled with the tick of the grandfather clock. When he showed me the drawing, I barely recognized myself. Eyes luminous, posture unguarded. "That's not me," I whispered. "It's who you are when you're not hiding." The air thickened. He reached for my hand, and I let him. His lips found mine, soft, tentative. A spark ignited, then a wildfire. We stumbled to the bedroom, a tangle of urgency and whispered apologies. Afterward, I traced the scar on his shoulder. "How'd you get this?" "Fell out of a tree. I was 7, trying to rescue a cat." I laughed, but it caught in my throat. Michael's scars were from golf accidents and knee surgeries. Louis propped himself up on one elbow. "You're thinking about him." "No. I'm here with you." Guilt pooled in my stomach, but his fingers laced through mine, anchoring me. Morning light filtered through the curtains, striping Louis's sleeping form. I slipped out of bed, my body humming with a strange new energy. In the kitchen, I brewed coffee, my hands steady. The front door opened. Michael. He'd cut his trip. "Peg!" he called, dragging his suitcase upstairs. Panic clawed my throat. I met him in the hallway, my robe cinched tight. "Who's here?" he asked, nodding at the second coffee cup. "No one. Just me." He eyed me, then sighed. "I'm sorry, Peg. About everything. Let's talk tonight." But when night came, I sat at my desk, writing a letter I'd never send. "Dear Michael, you once asked why I stopped writing. I think I just needed someone to read the words." The next morning, Louis was gone. A sketch lay on the pillow. Me, dancing in the rain. My face tilted toward the sky. At the hollowed cork, the bartender handed me an envelope. Inside, a note. "Thank you for reminding me what alive feels like. L." I never saw Louis again. But sometimes when the rain taps at my window, I dance. And when Michael watches, puzzled, I smile. "What's gotten into you?" he asks. "Life," I say. Thank you for listening. Did you like these infidelity stories? Drop a comment below if you want part 2. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more cheating wife stories.